Good morning. Thanks again to Todd Milne for starting off our service so beautifully. Deb Jacquemin and I were just talking about how services tend to get these little ritualized thumbprints that make them very special, and it seems like one of the things that has made our service, our virtual services, special is Todd's music, particularly starting our services off. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to go back. We may not be able to let you off the hook after this, Todd, because your music really is a very special way to start our service. So thank you so much. Glad that you're here, and also want to thank Daryl Vanderlyn, who has volunteered, one of our volunteers now, to help run our slideshow. So that you can see slides. I hope you're seeing slides at home. If you are, please raise your hand. Okay, looks like all of you are seeing them. Good job, Darrell. And let's see, our worship leader today is Lisa Conger. Lisa, always great to have you share your inspirational poetry and insights with us. Yeah, and also it's wonderful today to have Kelly Lagruda and Peggy Eckloff here. They're going to do our special music later on, and also actually have three pieces toward the end of our service today, so be sure and stick around for that special treat. Planted by Hands is in the house, and did I mention Deb Jacquemin is here, who's going to be leading us in some song and music as well. So thank you all so much for... Actually, you won't be leading us in song today, will you? You're just Tinkler. That could have a double meaning. Like I told those crows last week, no potty humor. Okay, so anyway, welcome to all of you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where in addition to being in good humor, we join together to create a nourishing liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome to all of you today. So glad to have you. I want to begin, as usual, by welcoming all that you bring with you, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences. All that helps make you who you are is welcome here today. And this, of course, includes those who hear me say this each Sunday, as well as those who might be joining us more recently. We're so glad to have you too. And I know you're there because I get emails from folks from all around the country who tune in. So thank you so much for streaming with us during this rather odd time to try to conduct regular worship services. We're glad you're here. Yeah, I don't have any special announcements this morning, so I'm going to ask you to take a few extra moments today to greet one another. For those who haven't done this before, it's an important part of our morning service together to greet one another. We don't get to do it in person, so we've been taking advantage of our cell phones to text or to make quick calls, maybe send an email to somebody that we're thinking about this morning. Thank you, Deb. And as always, I hope you'll continue to stay in touch with each other the best you can during these peculiar times following our service and in the days ahead. For now, we're going to move forward and have our chalice lighting. The chalice is the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Our opening words this morning is this poem by Janet Hutchinson entitled, "Of Course." Of course I want the truth, but here's the rub. Truth doesn't sit around still as a rock. It breathes and flows and turns inside out. Ever see a lion in a cage? He paces and glowers. That must be how God feels, locked in our little religions. Look how big the sky is, the deep distances between stars. Little speck you, that's you. Laughable speck, that's me. How could we contain the truth, all that overwhelming light? Our truth is just a pinprick in mystery's velvet curtain. Even so, see how we struggle to fix an eyeball on that. Peep show's tiny window.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Beautiful. We'll now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning, and Lisa is going to kindle the candles here in our sanctuary. If you have some at home, you're welcome to light those as well. We want to begin with a candle for Aaron Rowe, who's asked for a candle of care. As you heard last week, his father passed away suddenly about a week ago, and Aaron has traveled to Texas to be with his mother for a period. Please keep his entire family in your thoughts at this time. And also a candle in honor of Dan Gore and Kristen Winther, who Dan could not be here today to play with Planted by Hands, even though he often does, because Christy is a first responder, and they have to go to more extraordinary lengths than all of us are in order to keep themselves safe as well as keep others safe. So we light a candle thanking them for being first responder family during this odd time. And also a candle for Cly Evans and Charlotte Street. Cly's younger brother passed away rather unexpectedly, and he just learned of it about 2 weeks ago. So please keep Cly and his entire family in your thoughts as well. Let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud wherever you might be at this time. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. Now, we are actually returning to our special collections once a month. I know we have not been having our morning offering during our virtual services because it's rather difficult to do, as you might imagine. But I do certainly appreciate your continued support, financial support, and commitment to this congregation. So thank you for your generosity and for contributing in whatever means you're able to at this time. But we do want to give you the opportunity to especially contribute to some of those organizations and causes in our own community that we most care about. These are offerings that our Social Justice Coordinating Council determines. And this month that we are going to be having a special collection on to benefit Second Harvest Food Bank. Very important organization, especially at this time. Over the past 12 months, Second Harvest distributed 43 million pounds of food. That's enough food for 35.8 million meals to people facing hunger throughout the inland Northwest. That's 11 million pounds more than last year. 11 million pounds more than last year, and that increased demand has occurred obviously since the onset of the pandemic. In fact, Second Harvest distributed nearly double the amount of food from March to June compared to the same period in 2019. Almost double. So, Second Harvest believes this will continue to escalate for the foreseeable future, especially in light of the rising unemployment numbers caused by this pandemic. So certainly a very, very important service in our community. I know as the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, we wish that if we could, that we could provide millions and millions of meals to people in need in our community, but we can't do it. We can't do it, certainly not alone, but fortunately Second Harvest is here to help us accomplish this by all pitching in together to make that organization succeed in the impossible. So I'm sure this is something you're going to want to help contribute to if you can. If you do want to, just please, you can send a check here to the church, make it out to UUCS, but write in the memo line Second Harvest so we know what your contribution is for. You can actually also go onto our church website. You'll see a donate button right on the home page now that even gives you a choice of the special collection. And so you can click on that and make a donation directly with your own credit card or bank card. So thank you in advance for your incredible generosity, and thanks to the folks at Second Harvest for the just incredible service that they offer to our community. I'm going to now have our story for all ages, and I brought a very familiar but special friend. Oh my goodness, there is everybody's friend Purple. Hello, good to see you, Purple. Good to see you. Well, you seem cheery. Is everything going okay? Not really. I had kind of a rough week. A rough week? Well, what's going on? Well, I started school again this week. Oh, that's right. You started school a little bit early now. You are doing online classes, is that right? Yes, and I already failed my first history test. You've already failed your first history test? I'm so sorry. How bad was it? Did you get an F? Worse. Worse than an F? What's worse than an F? I got a Z. A Z? That's pretty bad, I guess. So, what were some of the questions that you had? Well, let's see. The first question is, why is George Washington significant? Yeah, and what did you say? Because he's the first president I ever learned about in school. The first president you ever learned about in school? Isn't that true? Well, it's probably true, but I'm not sure that's the answer your teacher was quite looking for. You know, let's see, what else? What was another question that you were asked, when did the United States start? When did the United States start? Okay, well, what did you say? July 3rd, 2011. July 3rd, 2011, purple. That's not when the United States starts. That was your birthday. Yeah, that's when it started for me. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense too, but I don't think that's what your teacher was actually asking. So, okay, what was another question? Name one of the 7 wonders of the world. One of the 7 wonders of the world? Well, that's pretty easy. What did you say? The post office. The post office? Yeah, it's how we used to communicate with our email and Twitter. Oh, okay. Well, you know, the post office isn't ancient. It's still around, Purple. You could have fooled me. Well, I see, Purple. The problem, Purple, is that you really gave answers about yourself. The first president you learned about, and your birthday, and the tools that you and your friends like to communicate with. But they are all true. Well, yeah, they may be true, but they aren't necessarily history. Well, what's the difference? Well, let's see. History isn't about one person or even one place. It's about all of us, all people, from all places and from all times. It's not about your experiences. It's about the events that have been important to lots of people all over the world throughout human history. I think I get it. So the historical fact about George Washington is that he was the first president of the United States. Yeah, that's exactly it. And the United States started on July 4th, 1776, with the Declaration of Independence. Well, now you're getting it. So what's one of the 7 wonders of the world? Facebook. Well, I'm not sure Facebook is ancient, but I do hope someday soon it will be history. Thank you very much for being here, Purple. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Purple is quite the character. Has a wonderful way of looking at the world. I wish I could.
Now is the time in our service when we do a meditation. So please find a receptive posture and take a few deep breaths as we begin our time of meditation with these words. In celestial navigation, one travels by starlight, Polaris pointing the way. In the heart's navigation, one travels by the flame of individual fire, its flickering tongue telling its own truth, lighting the way.
For our reading today, Lisa and I are actually going to have a responsive reading. This is a familiar reading to a lot of us. It's one of my favorites, and I know the favorite to many. I think it captures one of the core values of our Unitarian tradition here at the UU Church of Spokane. Cherish your doubts, from the back of our hymnal. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth.
Doubt is the key to the door of knowledge. It is the servant of discovery.
A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief.
Doubt is the touchstone of truth. It is an acid which eats away the false.
Let no one fear for the truth, that doubt may consume it, for doubt is a testing of belief.
The truth stands boldly and unafraid. It is not shaken by the testing.
For truth, if it be truth, arises from each testing stronger, more secure.
Those that would silence doubt are filled with fear. Their houses are built on shifting sands.
But those who fear not doubt and know its use are founded on a rock.
They shall walk in the light of growing knowledge. The work of their hands shall endure.
Therefore, let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help.
It is to the wise as a staff to the blind. Doubt is the attendant of truth.
Good morning. Good morning. That feels odd, doesn't it? The crying of the hungry through the deserts where they're wandering.
Yeah, they're crying out for heaven's own benevolence upon them.
I hear destructive powers prevailing.
I hear fools falsely hailing
To the crooked words of tyrants when they call. I hear them all, I hear them all, I hear them all. I hear the sounds of tearing pages and the roar of burning paper.
All the crimes and acquisitions turn to air and ash and vapor.
And the rattle of the shackled fall behind the emancipator. And the lowliest together in their stalls. I hear them all, I hear them all, I hear them all.
Places at the table when they're called. I hear them all, I hear them all, I hear them all. We'll take our places at the table when we're called. I hear them all, I hear them all, I hear them all. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, your land is my land, is my land. From California to New York Island, with forest to the Gulf Stream waters. I hear them all, I hear them all, I hear them
Thank you so much. I don't know if the sound of one hand clapping helps, or at least one set of hands help, is better or worse in a big room like this, but I know everybody at home was very glad to have Planted by Hands in the house again, so thank you both for being here, and more to come. I'm going to be giving now another sermon in my summer Perennial Problems Series, in which I discuss some classic philosophical problems. I'm actually going to be off next Sunday, but we'll return in September for a couple, maybe 3 more sermons before this series wraps up. I'm really looking forward to getting to those. Been laying the foundation, but really want to get to some more practical stuff like one's personal meaning. What is the basis of your personal meaning? It's a great question to ponder. And also society. That's very practical. What should the basis of society be? What is a good society like? And what are some of the questions that philosophy raises about that? So looking forward to getting back to this in a few weeks. Today's sermon, as you probably saw on the slide, thanks to Darrell, is the basis of truth. What is yours? And I'll begin by mentioning that I've never had to testify in court, but as a philosopher, I've long thought that I would have trouble swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I could swear to do my best to say what I think might be true and promise not to intentionally lie, but swearing that I could tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth would itself be a lie. This is so because the art of philosophizing means questioning whatever is purported to be true. As philosopher Lou Marinoff says, well-intentioned and good-hearted layfolk, perplexed and perturbed by the philosopher's perennially, if not reflexive, disputatious stance, Lou has a way with words, fell perforce to grasp the fundamental instrument in the quintessential philosophical toolkit, namely doubt. But doubting that we know the whole truth and nothing but the truth does not prevent us from functioning or cause us to be overly confused about daily living. We can still balance our checkbooks. Thus, although I believe wholeheartedly and single-mindedly that 1 + 1 = 2, and moreover know how to prove it, Marinoff says, I also doubt fervently that I possess anything like a metaphysically adequate explanation of why it is true, an ontologically adequate conception of what is true, and an epistemically adequate account of what makes it true. That's about where your heads spin, I'm sure. So today I want us to consider this most challenging but also liberating of the philosophical questions. How do we know the truth? But before we begin, I want to remind you that this is part of a Perennial Problems series of sermons on fundamental philosophical questions. It's not meant to be an introduction to philosophy. My intention, rather, is to get you to consider the difficulty in answering these perennial problems for yourself and to question the basis of your own assumptions about them. Socrates famously said the unexamined life is not worth living, just as Thales of Miletus, the first known Western philosopher, said famously, "Know thyself." Moving through life by rote may seem easy and safe, but according to these philosophical exhortations, doing so is not living to our fullest potential. The branch of philosophy that deals with the problem of truth is called epistemology, from the Greek word meaning knowledge. How do we know? It's akin to metaphysics, the study of the underlying nature of reality, which we considered a little bit last week, because both truth and reality are hard to ascertain with absolute certainty, leaving us in a position to continuously question our assumptions about both. But the problem of truth, or of knowing, is fundamental to all perennial problems, including metaphysics. How do you know what you believe about reality is true? How do you know what you believe about ethics is true? How do you know what you believe about the meaning in our lives is true? How do we know that anything we believe is true? Most of us, being untrained in philosophy, in addition to living in communities that are held together and defined by what we share in common, including conventional wisdom, arrive at our notions of truth without much thought through a hodgepodge of avenues. There are a handful of usual ways in which we claim to know the truth. While some of us may favor one or two of them, most of us revert instinctively to whichever one best justifies our beliefs in the moment. I say this because more often than genuinely seeking the truth, we prefer to confirm what we already believe is true at the time, or feels true at the time. We hear an idea, have an immediate feeling about it, then rationalize the feeling with explanations and arguments that convince us the feeling must be true. When it comes to truth, we often put the cart before the horse. It's true, we commit to the truth of it before we know why. Common sense is one hallowed approach to this unquestionable question. This folksy avenue to knowledge presumes to base truth on what should already be plain to everyone. Not long ago, however, most people knew that the earth was obviously flat. Just look out toward the horizon and see its edge as plain as the nose on your face. Some believe so ferociously that the sun revolves around the earth that they were ready to condemn anyone who disagreed. Galileo and Copernicus would be safe discussing their heliocentric views today, yet to this day, we all still speak of non-existent sunrises and sunsets instead of earth rises and earth sets. Common sense beliefs about gender, skin pigmentation, religious beliefs, and birthplaces have also led to widespread prejudices, injustices, and cruelties that we are still struggling to outgrow and overcome. And this isn't to say that going along with the crowd is always wrong, or that there isn't something to be said for our collective wisdom, but it should be enough to cast doubt on common sense as a reliable measure of truth. Relying upon experts or expertise is closely akin to common sense. Experts are those in our society who we believe should know what they're talking about, even if most of us don't. That's why we go to a doctor when we're sick. But then again, there's that old adage when it comes to a serious health problem to always get a second opinion. The experts can get it wrong, and the experts don't always agree with each other. In the 1940s and 50s, corresponding with a rising number of mothers going to work in factories and industries in the early part of the 20th century, physicians widely considered formula a safe and healthy substitute for breast milk. But in 1990, the American Academy of Pediatrics discouraged the use of formula in light of new research indicating that it can have negative health impacts on infants. Similarly, I still recall the night 17 years ago in 2003 when Secretary of State General Colin Powell, our nation's top military expert, sat on live TV to convince the UN Security Council and the American people that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and that he knew where they were. Every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources, he said. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence. There is no doubt in my mind. As it turns out, a little philosophical doubt would have done Powell some good, who got it completely wrong despite his assurances. And this may have prevented our nation's preemptive and retaliatory strike against Iraq, which had nothing to do with the terrorist attacks of 9/11 to begin with. So again, unequivocally trusting the experts, whether they are well-meaning, trustworthy or not, is not a reliable source of truth. Another avenue toward truth is relying upon the proper authorities. It differs from expertise because authorities don't have to claim any expertise, just the power and right to know and enforce what they say is true. Donald Trump gets away with it almost every day by making fact-free assumptions. Trying to get a bit of data out of him to back up some of his preposterous claims is harder than stealing a bar of gold from Fort Knox. In April, for example, he assured us the coming warmer weather would end the coronavirus, that it would disappear like a miracle. It hasn't. In June, he told us it was fading away. It wasn't. In July, he told us the U.S. now has the lowest pandemic-related mortality rate in the world. We don't. Simply believing whatever the authorities tell us, which may be worse than just going along with the crowd, is itself a type of authoritarian thinking where mindless vassals willingly give up their ability to think for themselves. Whether the authorities are high priests claiming to speak for God or kings claiming to have a divine right to do so, dead scribes or narcissistic presidents who are so puffed up they believe all they need to do is utter their own stream of consciousness and it becomes the truth. Let there be light. Authorities are hardly a reliable avenue to claim one has a firm grasp of the truth. How do you know it's true? Because President Trump says so? probably not a good argument. Let's talk about data itself. While it's more convincing when experts and authorities provide us with hard evidence for their beliefs, such evidence, no matter how empirical, can be interpreted and misperceived. This avenue toward truth is based upon sensual experience, which ranges anywhere from what we have seen and experienced ourselves to what science has painstakingly worked to prove and ascertain. The problem with purely materialistic proofs, however, is that our experiences of the physical world are always subjective and relative to our own limited perceptions. This is why Descartes famously argued that the only thing that we can be sure of is the existence of our own minds. But as Bertrand Russell points out, many philosophers believe that our perceptions point to things that truly exist outside of our minds. I think most would agree. But our subjective interpretations of those things prevent us from fully comprehending them as they really are. Ours, rather, is a mental interpretation of what he called sense data. That what we directly see and feel is merely appearance, he says, which we believe to be a sign of some reality behind it. So even materialism, empiricism, physics, and science are not wholly adequate instruments of truth. Descartes didn't think we should rely upon these things at all, since all are dubious. He believed rather that the one thing that he thought we cannot doubt, the mind, can arrive at truth through reason alone, which I treat as synonymous with logic. And there are two kinds of logic in general, deductive and inductive. The latter of which I don't consider logic at all. Inductive logic is based on probability. The idea, the more something occurs, the more reasonable it is to presume that it is going to keep occurring, or at least occur again. An inductive argument is considered sound if what it infers will happen is more probable than not. And I, again, personally don't consider it logic, because all creatures instinctively behave according to consistent environmental responses. Even my pet dogs point at the back door when they want to go outside because I consistently respond by opening it for them. Why wouldn't I continue to do so? Not that I'm poo-pooing the inductive processes, I'm just saying they come naturally. You don't have to learn them or practice them. Deductive reasoning, on the other hand, is based purely on form, like mathematical equations. If the terms of an argument, whether they refer to real things like men and Socrates, or symbols like S and P as placeholders for any subject or predicate, are in the right place, in the proper relationship, then we have a logically valid argument. Now, this doesn't mean it's true, however, only that it is sound. For the conclusion of a valid argument to be true, its premises must be true. If the premises of a valid argument are true, then its conclusion must be true. If the premises of a valid argument are true, then its conclusion must be true. But here's the rub. There's no way to guarantee the premises are true with absolute certainty. So deductive logic is not a wholly adequate avenue to truth either. Neither is inductive. Just because something has happened many times in the past doesn't guarantee it will continue happening. Just because the sun has risen every morning in the past, or should I say just because the earth continues spinning on its axis, is no guarantee that it will do so tomorrow. Chances are it will, but there could always be an unforeseen calamity ahead of us. The final avenue to truth we ought to consider is intuition, a word that etymologically means inner look or inner tutor, and is most commonly considered a kind of gut instinct or feeling about what's true that isn't reliant upon immediate external input, empirical data, expertise, logical analysis, or otherwise. Many of us have experienced instances where such knowledge has proven to be correct in our lives, but not always. Sometimes our hunches are also proven to be completely wrong, which is itself enough to cause a proper degree of doubt about it when it comes to determining the truth based upon our instincts and our feelings. It could be that intuition is based upon lots of experienced insight that doesn't require us to think much about these matters any more than an experienced athlete has to think about playing sports, or a musician about playing a guitar. A musician who can, forget her glasses so she doesn't have to even read her music and can play her guitar. Oh. But feeling sure that one is right, leads to much embarrassment when one turns out to be wrong, and sometimes to undue anger and conflict and injustices against others. In his book on being certain, neurologist Robert Burton tells us that certainty is and similar states of knowing what we know arise out of involuntary brain mechanisms that, like love or anger, function independently of reason. Isn't it incredible that knowing functions independently of reason? He also says the feeling of knowing and its kindred feelings should be considered as primary as the states of fear and anger. Knowing is a feeling, not reason. If this is so, then when we're feeling certain about the only thing we can really be certain of is that we're having an emotional reaction. So we've looked at the common avenues to truth: common sense, expertise, authorities, empirical data, reason, and intuition, and have found reasons to doubt them all. Even if doubt is the fundamental instrument in the philosopher's toolkit, realizing that we can't know anything for certain can cause a degree of anxiety about making even the smallest of decisions in our lives. How can we choose if we can't be sure of the outcome or if we're making the right move? No wonder so many people prefer to go on thinking that they are absolutely right about their beliefs, and why most of them gravitate towards authoritarian thinking because the authorities can't be questioned. Therefore, no doubts can ever be expressed. At times in human history, entire societies have been so authoritarian that thinking for oneself and expressing opposing opinions could lead to a death sentence. This series on the perennial problems addressed by classical philosophy over the centuries is based on classical philosophy over the centuries, but did you know that after Christianity became the official Roman religion in the 4th century CE, most philosophical writings were destroyed? According to A.C. Grayling's The History of Philosophy, it has been estimated that as much as 90% of the literature of antiquity perished in the onslaught. 90%. The Christians took the fallen stones of temples to build their churches, and overwrote the manuscripts of philosophers and poets with their scripture text. It is hard to comprehend, still less to forgive, the immense loss of literature, philosophy, history, and general culture this represented. Moreover, at the time Christianity existed in a time of mutually hostile and competing versions, and the effort, eventually successful, to achieve a degree of consensus on a right version required treating the others as heresies and aberrations requiring suppression, including violent suppression. By the 6th century, Emperor Justinian put the church authorities in charge of the academy that Plato had begun centuries before to prevent the teachings of what he considered pagan philosophy. That's about when the Dark Ages began, lasting hundreds of years. There were some Christian philosophers during the Middle Ages, some great ones, including Augustine and Aquinas on its bookends, but they all had to philosophize in church-sanctioned terms, in church language. We've moved in and out of these periods of endarkenment, followed by periods of Renaissance and Enlightenment, but always seem to teeter on the edge of returning to authoritarianism, fascism, and groupthink, as our society is doing today. Today, in addition to the appeal to authoritarian populists on the far right who falsely promise to keep us safe in exchange for our unquestioning devotion, extremists on the far left are claiming, since there is no absolute truth, all truths are equal, which means no truth can dominate. Protecting the opinions of others against questions, no matter how absurd those beliefs are, has become a matter of social justice. This perspective, known as postmodernism, altogether rejects the truth of empirical data, reason, science, and human nature, meaning there is no objective truth and nothing that any of us share in common, no human nature. Hence the additional fanatic emphasis upon identity, individual identity. But such thinking commits what's called the existential fallacy. Just because we can't know the truth with certainty doesn't mean there is no such thing as truth. And we can therefore make up whatever truth we want and consider it just as good as any other. It's like saying, there are no such things as unicorns, therefore my unicorn is just as good as yours. While it may be true that unicorns don't exist, furthermore, it is entirely possible that truth does exist. Just because we don't know something to be true doesn't mean it isn't. As I've been arguing, we may not have an avenue for ascertaining absolute truth, but some avenues, especially when combined, can make us feel more secure in our choices and beliefs. Agreement between science, reason, experience, expertise, topped with a little common sense, makes a formidable argument. This is why I often say, base your next leap of faith upon your best educated guess. Not blind faith. Just because we can't be certain of anything doesn't mean anything goes. All beliefs are not equal. A belief in unicorns is not equal to a belief in horses. For unlike the former, there are many sound reasons to believe in horses, or at least in the sense data that appears to us to be horses. So that's my advice as you wrestle with the perennial problem of truth. Consider the value of the avenues to truth that you currently lean on, And if they are heavy towards authoritarianism, emotionalism, and the false feeling of certainty, in other words, emotionalism, it may be time to focus more on empiricism, reason, and expertise to give your beliefs more weight. And if you lean toward any single avenue, it may be good to mix it up with some of the others to also give your beliefs more weight. Finally, to be philosophical about truth. Cherish your doubts, which is not the same as saying don't believe in anything. It just means be dubious of your own beliefs as well as what others ask you to believe. Certainty may feel better, at least for those unaccustomed to routinely living in a state of doubt, but it is only a false sense of certainty, which doesn't really make us safe, causes us to deceive ourselves, and leads us to feel fearful and hostile toward those we disagree with. Remaining doubtful, on the other hand, doesn't lead to undue skepticism, nihilism, or an existential crisis, as some might think, but to a life of humility, of open-mindedness, of acceptance, of diverse friendships, of awe and wonder and continuous growth and self-examination, which a wise man once said is the only kind of life worth living. Thank you.
Join us in singing hymn number 100, Peace Like a River.
I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. In my soul. Joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. In my soul. Love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. In my soul. Strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain
Our benediction this morning is a variation of a poem or a prayer that I wrote. Make us aware of the truth and beauty around us, the truth and beauty within us, and the truth and beauty we can transform into the world. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.
This is the life I have been given. These are the seasons of my time, and I am seeking out the light according to design. I've weathered storms I cannot count to make this world my home, in a place where small and twisted things can split the heart of stone. In one like me, you might not see how I have managed to exist. Fragile, crooked rack of limbs in terrain as rough as this. For those who take their chances here, experience has shown that sometimes small and twisted things can split the heart of stone. So shed no tear of pity here, spin no tale of tragic grace. Just let it be enough that life is blooming in this rocky place. It is the proof that seeds will grow wherever they are sown, and sometimes small and twisted things can split the heart of stone. It is the proof that seeds will grow wherever they are sown, and sometimes small and twisted things can split the heart of stone.